aired both on radio and social media. LabbyTale, Habits That Count, will also explore habits we can utilize to remedy or change our circumstances. The habit loop will be at the center of every discussion. Every Sunday, LabbyTale, Habits That Count, 5:30 p.m. on radio, Facebook, and YouTube. LabbyTale, Habits That Count.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of LabbyTale, Habits That Count, a place where we examine issues or concerns and we identify principles of habits that we can utilize to fix them or to remedy them. I am your host, Dr. Martha J. And today you are listening to us via DBS Radio, whether you're listening via YouTube or Facebook, or just streaming live, whether you're listening in the diaspora, in Dominica locally, or in the Caribbean, we want to say welcome and thank you for your listen. Today, LabbyTale is brought to you kind compliments of Hilltop Renovations, distinguished and dependable service. Whether you're looking for services for accommodation or for renovation, Hilltop Renovations is one of your best stops in St. Thomas. And Rainbow Construction gives you reasonable and reliable service in Dominica. All your building needs, your construction needs, Rainbow Construction is there for you. And we have Leonard Taxis. He's reliable and affordable in St. Thomas. And of course, you have Budding Writers Academy that empowers teachers to equip students. So these are our sponsors for today. Thank you very much for your sponsorship. And this week on LabbyTale, we continue our discussion with youth skills development, but more from a perspective of how we can support regions in their plight to build resilience in such fragile times. Before I go to my guest and ask her to introduce herself, I want to share the number that you can call if you feel inclined to call today. So if you want to call locally, our number is 448-3284 or 1-800-327. And if you want to call from international, you can do that via WhatsApp. And it's 305-432-9744. I'm going to say those numbers again. Local numbers to call, 448-3284 or 1-800-327. And if you want to call internationally, 305-432-9744. I want to head out my crew on Facebook. You've been always so vigilant and your comments, we always welcome them. Today, hopefully, I will be able to give you a head up and share whatever thoughts you share with us on Facebook. I want you to know that we are always paying attention to what you say and we value your comments. We know that some people have been asking for more time and we just want to thank you for just recognizing that we're bringing value to you and you want to hear us longer. And hopefully we can, fulfill your needs one of those days. But for now, we're going to make sure that that half hour counts. So my guest today is Muriel Baptiste. She's program manager and she's also an organizer. Muriel is executive director of a nonprofit, Utopia Connect in Chicago, and that concerns itself with the advancement of women and youth. And today she joins me so that we can take a look at youth skills development from a proactive stance. And of course, we always try to remedy things. We always try to fix things. We always try to come up with practices and habits that we can implement. And that's what we're going to do today. So Muriel, I want to say to you, thank you for just accepting my invitation. You promised that you were going to come back. And of course, you made yourself available. And I just want to say thank you so much. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you again for having me on. And I'm happy to share more about this topic of youth development and skill development. So I appreciate the opportunity to just have at least 20 minutes, probably. Good afternoon to the audience as well, Dominican audience. It's nice to actually be on DBS because I started part of my career on DBS before
You,
I
you
moved to
did.
Chicago and
You
studied
did.
journalism. So
Yes.
all of this is really dear to my heart. I've been doing this work, working with young people or building out programming for young people in Chicago for the last 22 years and, well, maybe 23 years. So it's good to be able to give back in this moment and figure out some ways that we potentially could expand the same to Dominica.
Definitely. And before I even go further, I want to say congratulations to our new Kalinago chief. It's a she, and I am so proud of her. We have a female president, we have a female Kalinago chief, and hopefully that fever might just continue on over the waters and other places. I'm not saying anything else, but it's just a hint that it's awesome to be in a space where we recognize that women are capable of taking leadership positions. And Dominica has been doing that from the 1980s. We're not new to this thing. We know that women can lead and can lead well. So Muriel, thank you again for just being here. And I want to just say that we want to talk about youth skills development, but I want to look at it in the perspective of climate action. For example, in other words, what I mean by that is we need to prepare ourselves as a region, not just a country, as a region, because we are vulnerable. Of course, although no country in the world is safe from climate change, everybody is, susceptible to climate change. However, the Caribbean is very vulnerable. We have other countries that are more vulnerable than us, but we are vulnerable. And we know that the ability of a country to bounce back after a natural disaster depends on not just its natural resource, its human resources, resources in general, and that includes human resources. One country for 1 minute in the Caribbean, you can find that we have an excellent economy. And then the next day, we might find ourselves in a mess. For example, look at what happened to Barbados and Beryl and St. Vincent and the Grenadines and all those countries. So what we really want to say is all of us are susceptible, but some of us are more vulnerable. What I want to talk about today is to pretty much pay attention to one of the things that I've been doing is listening to the Caribbean leaders. So every month, each of the Caribbean leaders, most of them, they have a press conference, Dominica, Barbados, and the other countries. And I try to look for them and listen to what they have to say. And those of them who have been stricken by disaster, almost every time they speak, you will hear them mention that the impacts of climate change. And one of the things that is part of that conversation is how the countries that cause the biggest contributors to climate change, they should be supporting the smaller countries, the vulnerable countries. And I agree. It's a notion that I agree to. But what I want to say, today's program is about what do we do meanwhile, while we are waiting and expecting the countries, the big, how we call them, the G8s, the ones who are causing all of those, the bigger contributors, while we are waiting on them to pay up, what do we do? And so what I want to say today, we want to talk about how do we build, how do we prepare ourselves, how do we navigate skills development to be stronger, to come out on the strong side? How do we build resilience so that we can withstand that? And I know climate action doesn't only stop at skills development, but it's the base. I know we have to think of things like healthcare and education and finance planning and, renewable energy and water management and technical skills. All of those things come up as part of climate action. But I believe that the base is skills development. So Muriel, thank you again for coming. And I want to ask you, we know that the ultimate goal for youth skills development is for employment and to build sustainability. I want to ask you, what does skill development look like from a proactive stance?
Yeah, so I'm happy that you talked about climate action, and there are a number of skills that fall into that, environmental studies, climate science, project management, sustainable agriculture, solar and wind energy. And just hearing some of that might sound overwhelming, right? When you're thinking about, oh, how do we even begin doing some of this work? And I would simply say starting at the bottom, right? Like I mentioned on the last show, this is a gift that we can give to young people. And we don't often see immediate results, but I strongly believe it is an economic driver for communities, boosting long-term sustainability. So in Chicago, we have to think about a proactive approach. While a large part of this work we've been doing was born from a need to create safe and supportive learning environments for young people, over the years, with deep research in the work we've been doing, it shows evidence of providing some of the following for young people. It equips them with what we have labeled as the 21st century skills, and that we can discuss a little later, but also the hard skills that readies them for the workforce and for economic success. Again, here we structured and scaffold our opportunities by offering pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, advanced apprenticeships, and internships. We then train our professionals on professional youth development skills and best practices that they need to use to engage our young people. And then we position them at schools and community-based organizations across the city. If I can share a few distinctive aspects for consideration, it would be adopting a proactive mindset as maybe that first step. This requires forward thinking, in my view. When we acknowledge that our young people will become our leading workforce, it means then that we need to ensure that they have the skills to care for themselves and their families, but also understanding the impact it will have on the economy when we lack the skilled labor. It strains the economy.
Exactly.
So one of those that I mentioned recently was here in Chicago, lifeguarding. Recognized that we were struggling with supplying lifeguards to beaches and pools across the city. So we determined we needed to beef up our trainings to meet that demand. I think it requires smart and forward leadership to take a proactive approach to youth mentorship and skill development. And maybe perhaps we can begin to institute a similar approach to utilizing a few hours after school. So that's what we do. After school, we have a ready audience already. We keep them after school for a few hours. This might require sitting at the table with the education department to figure out, okay, how do we now implement and expand if it's not being done after school programming. The other is probably what we do, just developing partnerships. And I talked about this a little more on the last segment, but many of our partners are very high level players in the city of Chicago, the State Department, and other city departments, and they help us to build capacity. And that's what partnerships help to do. So begin thinking on that level about how we can broaden our partnerships to support this work, because this has allowed us to serve over 22,000 teens in the city of Chicago.
Awesome.
We must also be willing to assess needs and become
That's what I was gonna
responsive
ask.
to those needs.
Awesome.
Yeah, these activities are structured and broken down into disciplines, but we often are based on need, interest, and again, factoring in youth voice. So some of the types of programs that fall under our portfolios are programs in the STEM field. We have programs like forensics, graphic design, robotics, phlebotomy, gaming, website design, solar energy, culinary, gardening, and so many more programs fall under our STEM field. In communications, we offer programs like journalism, music, recording, songwriting, poetry, investigative reporting, debate. We also offer the trades. We realize that after the pandemic, a number of young people were like, I don't know if I want to go back to school. I don't know, just up, their lives were appended in so many ways. And we have since brought back a number, even the education department brought back things like carpentry. But offering the trade programs, we are now able to offer teens welding, electricity, cosmetology, nail tech. And then we have the sports program, and it spans an array of programs in like soccer and tennis. And I even got to offer cricket for,
Wow.
it's hard to find cricket instructors in Chicago, but I was able to find an Indian community that was able to actually implement a cricket program and expose teens. And that's the point, exposure, right? Giving young people the opportunity to explore opportunities. And what we're finding is that when young people graduate out of our programs after 4 years, they know what they want to do. They have a greater sense of purpose and direction because they've had that exposure.
Wow.
And then the other thing I'd say is to consider a pipeline of opportunity to create supportive growth, because there's nothing more frustrating than being trained and then having nothing to do with
Nothing to do. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why youth skills is not just one stakeholder. So you would be the organization that partners with the Department of Education or partner with the schools, but we would also have to partner with the employers or the private sector, because and I like what you said about needs assessment. And if you remember what Miss our youth department development officer said, she said that they do conduct a youth skills a needs assessment in each community. But what I would like, and when we speak right now, we're not speaking only of Dominica, we're speaking of a region that is susceptible to climate change, tropical storms, period. Once hurricane season comes up, we are all on edge because we are very susceptible. So that's why I would like this conversation to be considered a conversation for any community that is susceptible to climate change, that is preparing for climate action. And so that's why we need all of those stakeholders. I like the idea of having the schools pay attention to let me see, I'm having a text. Okay. Somebody was asking a question, so we'll take that after. But let me just focus on what I was saying. So I like the idea that we want to be able to bring that, because we want people to understand, not have a stigma towards skills development. We have that stigma that if you are developing a skill, that means you're not smart. It's nothing wrong in developing a skill while you are in school. Probably you are in the track of science, all sciences, physics, chemistry. Like when I went to grammar school, I wanted to be a nurse, by the way, and they didn't put me in the science track because they didn't think I was smart enough. That was how the system was at the time. I hope it has changed. They put me in business, and I have a business now, at least. Maybe it helps. But the point is, even if you are in a track where you think you're headed to be a medical doctor, nothing is wrong in wanting to be in a proactive skill building program where you're developing graphic design skills, or where you're doing forensic science, or where you're doing any of those things. Because what it does, it as Muriel just said, it gives you a clearer vision. So many times, as a university instructor, I can tell you that the freshmen, at least 60% of freshmen, they come to school not knowing what they want to do. They're undecided, not knowing what they want to do. And they waste their parents' money, of course, for an entire year because they do not know what they want to study. Proactive skills development in high schools would do two things. It would prepare us for building resilience. Let us suppose we had something as simple as Red Cross, being able to be an EMT or to be all of that. After a disaster, these are the people we need most. And we have to wait sometimes. We don't want to have to wait for a crew to come from overseas to help. We welcome a crew from overseas, but we want to be able to have people in our own space that can deal with that. And so as a region, we want us to focus on ensuring that while we wait for the big contributors of climate change, we want to at least have a plan. Let us suppose we're to get $1 million US from America or pounds from England, because they say, okay, we want to give that to a Caribbean country. Do we have a plan already for what are we going to do with it? Yes, we want to be able to build solar power, whatever it is, but do we have our own teams that can be employed in there? So we really want us to take that proactive stance so that we can build that we can do better. I know what time flies back really quickly. So Myriad, tell me about soft skills. Yes, everything you mentioned so far were the trades, the carpenter, the
welding,
robotics, and all of those. But there are some skills we need that we definitely need that would help us with resilience as well. Tell me how.
Yeah, no, I think it's quite empowering to zero in on skill development and soft skills. And again, based on research, we know that employers noted that some of the top skills that they've needed over time and found to be lacking in candidates is soft skills. So I should mention that while we are heavily content and project-based in delivery of these models, we coupled it with soft skills development. And I think some people jump right into the content, forgetting how essential those soft skills are. But even if you have a hard skill and no soft skills, the likelihood of successfully finding and keeping that job becomes the issue. So, and by soft skills, I just want to clarify that I mean things like showing up on time or calling your employer if you're running late, communication and collaborative skills, general professional etiquette skills, all of those things, they go a long way. And we can't just assume that our young people are gaining while they're sitting in the classroom, right?
Definitely.
So it is overall, we focus on adaptability skills. And I want to use that word specifically because I think that's the big kicker right there to even when disaster happens, that we have to figure out, we have to learn adaptability skills.
Yes, we do.
Pivot. And I think that's the big thing that's necessary here. So it's the best defense we can give to communities that are often plagued by disruptions from hurricanes or floods, helping them to pivot and reimagine their new reality after something like this happens. So our process has only gotten better over time because the more you do this work, the more you learn things that you're either missing or overdoing. So what we do is institute a consistent approach of infusing elements of learning and wellness practices into that comes into play as well into the work that we do.
All right, let's take a question from the audience. So Ingrid Elwa asks, is there a way to start with our children? I'm thinking of their mindset.
Can you repeat that question?
Is there a way to start with our children? She's at an elementary school and she's saying, is there a way to begin that whole process with children even as young as the elementary kids?
Yeah.
Mindset, yes.
Mindset. Oh, definitely. And I think I think some work has to be done around that versus just blindly figuring out that maybe I'm doing it, maybe I'm hitting these markers or not. So that's where I think conversation needs to be had about what is our goal, and what is our process for getting there. So I think there are little things that can be done. It could be incremental steps that is done even before high school. So in elementary school, that you're beginning to have conversations and you're beginning to play games that still kind of is centered around soft skills as well. So it's not too early to start in elementary school.
Awesome. And then we have another question by Teresa Lewis. She says, what are the school hours like? So I suppose she was referring to, you mentioned that after school. Yes. What are the school hours like?
Here generally by about 3:00 for the most part. There's some schools that might go until 3:30, but generally our schools end here about 3, some 2:30. A few private schools may go a bit longer, but generally it's around 3:00. So our programs would start around 3:15, 3:30, and go up until probably 7:00. We try to get kids home early enough. So we factor that into in terms of safety.
Right. And high school in Dominica is a lot earlier than that. But what I
Right.
want to also let our listeners know is that although these opportunities are voluntary, in other words, students have to apply to it, there are incentives that encourage them to do it. They get paid, and as Muriel talked about, the soft skills, students get paid if they come every day. They're allowed a few absences, and after that, that's it. So if students want to be paid, they need to show up on time, and they also need to participate. I want to say one more thing in the realm of soft skills. I work as adjunct faculty with Florida Tech. And one of the things I start off the very first week of school as a communication instructor, I say to the students, you're all brilliant. They're all probably going to get an A at the end of this class. And they normally ask, especially if they're in their senior year, they're going to ask for recommendation. And I say, your recommendation from me is not going to be based on your A that you will get from this class. It's going to be based on your punctuality, on how dependable you are when you're in a group, on how prompt you are for submitting your assignments, because these are the things that employers are looking for. So even if you are brilliant and you can't come to class on time, you cannot submit your assignment on time, and you cannot your group members cannot rely on you, then you are not going to get a recommendation from me, because what am I going to say? I am preparing you for the workforce. And that's what we mean by soft skills. What about calling your employer if you're not able to show up? What is, people want to call 5 minutes before they're supposed to clock in. That is not being dependable. That's not being reliable. And these are the things we want to teach along with the trade skills. We want to make sure that we're teaching them those skills. So Muriel, I know we have like 6 minutes left. It comes so
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, how can you mobilize or support that level of preparedness in our region or our country? What can you do? I mean, I know you're an organizer. When we end the show, we always like to end with practices or habits. So what can we do to mobilize something to that effect, to be able to say to our countries in the region, hey, this is how we can go about skills development in a proactive manner. This is how we can bring skills development and let people see it's not because you didn't do well at school. It's because it's something we need in order to be able to survive this climate crisis that we are in, if we have to survive in our space.
Yeah, and I just quickly want to say that money sometimes is not all, so the kids here, we're able to pay the kids, but there are other incentives that you can give or dream about that you can figure out how to incentivize your programs as well. As it relates to mobilizing and preparedness, I think how it benefits the economy and builds sustainability is an area that we need to wrap our head around, probably. If we look at the benefits that this investment brings, just these skill developments, I think it can go a very long way. How much it helps to prepare young people for life and success, as well as having the overall scope of the impact it has on the economy. And I think this can be a catalyst for action. And the landscape is constantly shifting, and we know that. And it's actually getting worse with climate change. But I do believe that readiness meets opportunities, and a focus on these competencies will only boost leadership, entrepreneurial exploration, and give young people the confidence to take risk, explore, innovate, start their own businesses if they'd like. And, ultimately, I think the whole country benefits. So it's an investment worth making.
Awesome. I agree. What I want to ask, as an organizer, what would you need to make this level of organization a reality? If we were to say, and one thing I want to say to people is, we can't leave everything for government. I listen to people all the time and they say the government needs to do this and the government needs to do that. We can't leave everything for government. And so I wanted to ask you, as an organizer, what would you need to make this level of organization a reality for our region? And I'm saying our region because all the countries of the region pretty much have the same,
Yeah.
suffer the same situation. We all hurricane, it's like we're the playground for hurricanes. So what would you need to
Well,
be able
I probably need a whole hour to tell you this, but I will try to condense it in 1 minute.
to remain? Yes,
I think the UN is already championing this
yes.
research and grant level, probably
Mhm.
not nearly enough as is needed. So some countries are already implementing some things, but I must know that over the last few weeks with Beryl, as you mentioned, I feel like it's a rainforest right here in Chicago, because we've been feeling the effects of it. It's impacting everyone. So it may require some innovation by first, like I mentioned, assessing what the needs are, what the resources are, what you have or what you don't have. Let's talk about that. Planning will be an essential step. Poll the young people, invite youth into planning because that's where you're going to get the buy-in. Don't make it an afterthought, or pitch it to them after. Include young people. Get your youth voice involved. I think overall my recommendation is that we keep moving, right? Whatever you're doing, keep doing it and begin the work with what you have. And I think sometimes we pause for short of lack, and we have a mindset of lack versus, well, maybe I can be creative and do something different. So begin to work with what you have. If you have old mop buckets, find the soil and begin planting. Use small plastic cups to begin seeding. Consider what you have. Start drying and making teas. Do something. Give people incentive as well, as we did mention. I think that's important. And for instance, here in Chicago, one of the things that we started doing, again, urban farming has been just remarkable that it's not just one person doing it. It's just not us doing it. The city adopted it. So all of a sudden, they're planting on the rooftops of our city. Lots of vegetables are coming from our city. So there's a lot that we can begin doing. There's vertical farming happening. I got to meet some of our kids just recently, and they're like, this is what we're doing. And they're so excited about the product. So I think the mentorship of everyone chipping in, it's not just a silo of a message that's going out, but everyone is actually showing that we're all invested. I say tap into the diaspora as well. I think we have the resources. We're just not,
Pooling it.
Mhm.
Putting it together. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Muriel. It's like we can talk about this thing all day. I know that our time is up, actually. I want to say thank you. What I want to promise the people who are listening to my show is that at least for the next couple months, we're going to look at each aspect. How can we prepare for health-wise, education, finance, planning, and things like renewable resources and water management. All of those aspects, we need to be able to do well in those areas, to be able to be Dominica strong, as we say, because we just never know when another Maria hits or another Beryl hits, or Caribbean strong, Barbados strong, or St. Vincent strong, Grenadine strong. We have to make sure that we are prepared and not just sitting there waiting. We want to make sure that we use what we have. I saw a program recently where a young man left the United States and is in Dominica working on restoring the coffee in Dominica. These are things that's reforestation, agroforestry. All of those things are areas we need to focus on, and I will make sure that I pull in the resources, the people with the human resources to talk about that. Thank you very much, people, for your listen. Muriel, thank you so much for coming in. And I want to say, practices we always end with, make sure that Muriel said that we need to take a look at our needs. What do we need? Let's listen to the youth. Let's listen to the other stakeholders, the employers. What do they need? And let's do that together. And of course, tap into the diaspora and see how we can begin to talk, even have the conversation of proactive skills development in the region, in high schools. Have students beginning to develop those skills. By the time they finish those skills, by the time they've completed it in 4 years, they would already know what they want to do. They will already have some sort of form of employment skill so that they can function as, sustainable young people. Folks, you've been listening to Labby Teal, Habits That Count. I am your host, Dr. Martha J. And I want to say to you, you can listen to it again on Facebook, share it with someone, whether it's from DBS or Budding Writers, or you can listen to it on YouTube. And by Wednesday, I always try to give you the podcast version where you can listen to it on Spotify for those of you who do not care for Facebook or YouTube. Thank you again. And next week, we're going to talk, it's going to be inspiration. It's going to be all me trying to inspire you either to, I'm not going to tell you yet. You come next week and you'll find out. I'll let you know during the week. But I am going to try to inspire you. And we have a lot of good people coming up next month. I'm excited. So thank you again for your listen. Muriel, if you want to just say bye-bye, I just want to say thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, and hopefully we can get something going.
Awesome. And I want to say, sow kindness to at least one person and plant a seed, it will grow. Bye-bye.